And so we had a format that was outstanding, outstanding format. And so some of the interviews that we interviewed people, I don't know if you recall when the MOVE organization was bombed in Philadelphia. This was back in 1970, like the late 70s, mid 70s, early 80s. When the MOVE organization was bombed in Philadelphia, we had a first-hand interview with some of the MOVE people. We interviewed them on radio on KUCB. We had the first interview. We interviewed all the concerts, all the entertainers that came in Des Moines. They came through KUCB. We got a chance to interview them. I don't know if you recall, there was a young lady who came down from Waterloo, Iowa. She couldn't have been no more than 12 or 13 years old at the time. And she went on to be a big-time R&B star. Tracy Spencer was her name. I had the opportunity, I had the pleasure of doing an interview with her when she was just beginning to start out. She couldn't, like I said, she couldn't have been no more than 12 or 13 years old. But I had the opportunity to interview her. And I recently went back and listened to some of her CDs and some of her music, and I oftentimes think about, here's a young lady that I interviewed when she was 12 or 13 years old, and she went on to be a big-time star in the R&B. I had a chance to interview her. One of the other interviews that was real special for me, we interviewed a senator out of Omaha, Nebraska, Senator John DeKalb. He was a Democrat senator. And we did an extensive interview with him in regards to the kidnappings of some of the kids from Boys Town and the kidnapping of Johnny Garcia in Des Moines and Eugene Martin. And one of the things that we talked about when we interviewed Senator John DeKalb was he laid out the whole profile of how Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, because most of the boys that go there are orphans, they don't have any family, and how during the time that the Republicans would have the big parties in Omaha, Nebraska, there was a black man by the name of Larry King, who was a big-time Republican in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, everybody who's in politics, I'm sure in Omaha, Nebraska, and maybe even here in Des Moines, knows the name Larry King. I'm not talking about Larry King that be on TV, that used to be on TV. I'm not talking about that Larry King on CNN. I'm not talking about him. This Larry King was African American in Omaha, Nebraska, but he was a high-ranking Republican. And George Bush, the father, he was the president at the time. When they had the big fundraisers in Omaha, Nebraska, they would talk about how Larry King and all the Republicans, they would get the boys from Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska. This is public knowledge. I'm not saying anything that's not public knowledge. All this was covered and written in the book by Senator John DeKalb, the Franklin Credit Union cover-up. He exposed that whole operation in Omaha, Nebraska. And as he exposed that, in an interview, he talked about how so many of the city officials in Omaha, Nebraska was involved in this whole operation. He talked about how the kidnapping of Johnny Garcia took place here in Des Moines, Iowa. It was orchestrated out of Omaha, Nebraska, from the people that was organized in all this kind of operation in Omaha. So we had an opportunity to interview someone like a Senator John DeKalb out of Omaha, Nebraska. We had the opportunity to interview him. We had the opportunity to interview, like I said, so many people that came to Des Moines, just by telephone. We interviewed them. Ramona Africa, who was one of the survivors of the MOVE organization bombing, we had a chance to interview her. We had a chance to interview some of her family members, So the motto that KUCB set out, we met that motto. And it's interesting, as time went on, we knew that the kind of station that we had, that eventually they was going to come after us and try to shut us down because of the conscious level of the way we was raising the people's conscious. And that's something that we did, and that's something that they didn't want to go on here in Des Moines with a community radio station. When we first started out, we started out with 10,000 watt. People in Ames and Iowa City could pick us up. They used to call us and tell us they would listen to our broadcast. And some of the towns further out than that, they could pick us up. Eventually, we had to cut down to 10 watt because what happened was we were getting a lot of interference from people calling in to the FCC complaining about we was interfering with their TVs or their radios or whatever. And as that went on, you know, that it began to move to another level to where we was off the air for about a year, I think. About a year and a half we was off the air. We had to shut down. We had some trouble with our transmitter. So we went off the air for a year. I know some people thought that we was, you know, probably said, well, we glad them people out of the way, you know, they gone. But all it did was it just gave us a chance to regroup. When we came back on, we were stronger than when we came back on, then we went off the air. But you know what was interesting? In the midst of us being off the air, some of the representatives from the FCC office came here from Kansas City. And we had people that was encouraging them to take our equipment away from us so we couldn't go back on the air. But you know, that didn't happen because Allah was in the plan with us and He planned for us to go back on the air. So we was able to keep the equipment. We was off for 1 year. After 1 year, we went back on. And as I said, we went back on. We had a better format than we did in the beginning because we were able to reorganize things and put things together in such a way that the format, we took off a year, we was off the air for a year, it was better than we went on the air. So the history of KUCB really stands is on its own. You know, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to. We can talk about the history because we were part of that history. And even though 89.3 is still on the air today, you know, most times when a person challenges a license and you lose them, they can't come back and use the same call letters. They have to get different call letters, but they can still use the same signal as far as 89.3. They can still use that, the letters. So what has happened? 89.3 is still on the air, but trust me, if you know anything about radio and communication, you know that the people that's got 89.3 is nothing like what we had. And so when we was challenged, when they challenged us for the license, we knew that we were going to lose because they could no longer control us. And there was a big problem, you know. This was a real big problem. They no longer control us. They said we have to get those people out of there. We have to get someone in there that we can control, and we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to worry about the kind of programming. See, you have to understand that the programming that we had on KUCB, it did such a service to the community. You know, like for instance, if oftentimes we had young people that was missing. All we had to do was go on KUCB, put it out on the airwaves, and within an hour or 2 hours, we could locate that young person who was missing. Somebody got their home broken into. We put it on the air, and we could usually find out what was going on. We had a family to come through here, and their van broke down on the highway. Do you know we not only raised enough money to get their van fixed through KUCB, put them up in a motel, send them back on their way, send them back to New Orleans. I think the family was from there, a big family. But things like that. So that kind of service we were able to provide to the community. And so when the forces saw that we were in the direction that we were moving in, they said, look, you know, we got to get them people off the air. They can no longer be on the air. They can no longer be on the radio. We got to get somebody on the radio, somebody in that spot that we can control and to make sure that they're not going to do anything that we don't want them to do. And see, our motto was, you know, we said our motto was truth is the wealth of freedom. That meant that we was going to tell the truth without any hesitation. And we was going to communicate, and we was going to organize our people at the same time. We was going to organize the community at the same time. So that was our motto. So we met our motto. So the history of KUCB is one that, like I said, will stand the test of time, because it would be a long time before anyone would be able to put together a format, a radio station like we had. You know, now you see, let me just say this in closing. You see so many radio stations today, and they have these crazy shows on. I don't know what kind of shows they call them, because most of the time they don't even make any sense. But you see all these crazy talk shows they have on, all these crazy, all kind of shows where people really are just making a fool of themselves, or just showing how ignorant they are. And so, but to have a serious format, a serious program where you're talking about issues and you're talking about concerns, you're talking about the problems and things that's going on in the world, that's what KUCB did. That's what we stood for. The stations now and most of the radio shows now, if they are not controlled by their advertisers, they can't do it. Most of them cannot do it. If you have a commercial station in your city and it's controlled by the people that buy time, then trust me, those people cannot do too much on the airways. It has to be an independent, non-commercial station. Maybe they can do some things where they can tell the truth. But if it's commercialized, the commercials and the people that buy time are the ones that run and control that station. And all you have to do is look around in any major city where you're at, and you will see the kind of setup that you have when it comes to radio and broadcasting. Because that's why you have all the crazy shows that you have on today in communication, because you have people that buy time and put big money up to have those shows and produce those people that be on there. See, anytime you have anything that's opposite of that, most times they don't want that. But anyway, we wanted to take our time from the Liberation DJ's desk. Once again, this is Liberation DJ. This is kind of like part 2. This has been part 2 of the history of one of the greatest stations in the nation, is KUCB.